Mr. President, I came to the floor today because I am stunned. I just learned that the Republicans have announced to the country that they won't even call a hearing should and when President Obama does his job and nominates a replacement for Justice Scalia. And we send our sympathy, heartfelt, to his family. I don't know where the Republicans have come up with this notion that this is the right thing to do. If you look at the strict constitutionalists, you know that they're reading the Constitution. And unless they're phonies, this is what the Constitution says. The president shall nominate, and by and with the advice and consent of the Senate, shall appoint ambassadors, other public ministers and counsels, and judges of the Supreme Court. Now, where in this does it say, except in election years? As a matter of fact, we have acted 14 times in election years. Mr. President, whoever is a strict constructionist should read the Constitution. Article 2, Section 2, Clause 2, I'm going to read it again. The president shall nominate, and by and with the advice and consent of the Senate, shall appoint ambassadors, other public ministers and counsels, and judges of the Supreme Court. It doesn't say, as Senator Corder said, oh, the president can nominate, but nobody else has a job to do. Oh, no, it says, same sentence, and with the advice and consent of the Senate. To have such a press conference, as I understand, I didn't see it myself, but it's been reported to me that there's been an announcement that the Republicans won't even hold a hearing, goes against this Constitution. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a lawsuit brought by the people of this country, 70% of whom believe that we have an obligation. We have an obligation. Nowhere in the Constitution does it say it's too late for the president to nominate. Guess what? The Republicans keep saying, we need an elected president. Well, I have good news for them. This president was elected twice, and he's got about a year left. Guess what? I'm not going to run again, but I'm here now. I want to work. I didn't take this job to have a year off and not worry about working in my last year. Nowhere in the Constitution does it say, oh, and by the way, don't advise and consent if it's a Democratic president in his second term. It does not say that. So if you consider yourself a strict constructionist, then pay attention to this. And I'm proud that several Republicans on the other side said, baloney, we don't go along with that. Good for them. And more should do it. It doesn't say in the Constitution, you only advise and consent if it's a Republican president with a Republican Senate. Again, the Senate has repeatedly over the years considered Supreme Court nominees in both election years and in the final year of a president's term. Justice Kennedy, who serves now, a fellow Californian, was nominated by President Reagan in 1987. I was over in the House side, and I didn't have anything to do with it, but I sure watched it. And Kennedy was confirmed by a Democratic Senate during Reagan's last year in office. And my Republican friends say, oh, but this senator said this about it, and that senator said that, and Joe Biden said that. Doesn't matter what people say, it's what we do. And 14 times in history, we have voted on judges in an election year. So my Republican colleagues who suggest that this process cannot be done before President Obama leaves office are fooling themselves. History has disproven them. And the Constitution is going to chastise them. Whoever says, I want a dead Constitution. Read this. This is very clear. It absolutely is. So I guess I have a message for my Republican friends here. Pretty simple. Pretty simple. Do your job. Do your job. If you're afraid to do your job, then do something else with your life. If you don't want to do your job because you're worried that someone moderate may get through, then make your argument. If you want to vote no, vote no. But to hold a press conference and to say you won't even hold a hearing, it's outrageous. Mr. President, every day in towns and cities across this country, Americans show up for work and they do their jobs. They don't call up their bosses and say, I just don't feel like doing this today. I'm healthy, I'm fine, I'm well, but you know what? I don't want to do my job. They'd be fired. And they should be. Do your job. You're elected to do your job. No, the American people, they show up for their jobs. They do their jobs. It's as simple as that. And you know what? The justices of the Supreme Court, they show up and they do their jobs every day. Justice Scalia did it. They all do it. They hear cases. They write opinions. The Supreme Court is the last stop on the justice train. But to be able to function as our founding fathers in the United States Constitution intended, they need a full bench with all 9 justices. A Supreme Court with 8 justices is not a functioning court. Let's look at the Republicans' hero, Ronald Reagan. We always hear them say, Ronald Reagan, I was proud to serve in the House during Ronald Reagan's term. I didn't agree with him on a lot of things, but guess what? I agreed with him on this. You know what he said? I look forward to prompt hearings conducted in the spirit of cooperation and bipartisanship. I will do everything in my power as president to assist in that process. President Ronald Reagan, November 12, 1987. What did he say? Did he get up and say, oh, it's an election year, which it was? No. No. Kennedy was voted on in an election year, and President Reagan made the case. This is what else he said. Ronald Reagan said, every day that passes with the Supreme Court below the full strength impairs the people's business in that crucially important body. Let me say that again. Ronald Reagan, who was pushing for a vote on a Supreme Court justice in an election year, said the following: every day that passes with a Supreme Court below full strength impairs the people's business in that crucially important body. Now, I don't get it where the Republicans are coming from. They're disregarding Ronald Reagan, their hero. They're disregarding the Constitution that they says is their shining star of their being, which it should be for all of us. And they stand there today and blatantly announce they're not even going to hold a hearing on a nominee before they even know who he or she is. What is that about? I am truly stunned. I thought I've seen everything, but I've never seen this. You show up, you do your job. Now, I'm going to show you a few other quotes of people who are very important to this conversation and what they're saying about not moving forward. How about Sandra Day O'Connor? What an incredible woman. Appointed by Ronald Reagan, the first female ever appointed to the Supreme Court, a magnificent person and a Republican. What did she say? I think we need somebody there now to do the job, and let's get on with it. She just said that 10 days ago or less. Is she a partisan? I don't think so. She is speaking from the heart. She is speaking from her soul. She is speaking from experience. She knows the court has important cases before it and will be tied in knots if we don't have a court at full strength. Here's what she said again. Republican Sandra Day O'Connor, esteemed member of the Supreme Court, a Ronald Reagan nominee. I think we need somebody there now to do the job, and let's get on with it. I'm going to show you two more quotes from scholars here. This is from the American Constitution Society. Quote, a vacancy on the court for a year and a half, which is what the Republicans want, at least a year and a half, would mean many instances where the court could not resolve a split among the circuits. There would be the very undesirable result that the same federal law would have differing meanings in various parts of the country. That's the American Constitution Society. And then we have another quote I wanted to share with you. The director of the Byron White Center at the University of Colorado. It would essentially shut the Supreme Court down, she says, for 2 years. It would be a monumental crisis for the development of the law and the need to resolve large legal questions. It would essentially shut down the court for 2 years. It would be a monumental crisis for the development of the law and the need to resolve large legal questions. Now, Mr. President, it isn't as if large legal questions aren't at stake. Right now, the Supreme Court is set to look at some incredibly important cases that have real effects on our people. This isn't some argument, in a salon. This is real stuff. The cases can't wait, and it doesn't matter what side you're on these cases. They have to be resolved. How about voting rights? I don't think there'd be a difference of opinion here in this chamber that this is what makes this country great and special. The right to vote, the responsibility to vote. We have many states that have put forward voter ID laws. They needs to be told. They need to be told whether they're fair or unfair. Whatever side you come down on, we need a court to look at voting rights cases and see who the eligible voters are. Affirmative action, they're going to re-examine that case, whatever side you're on. It has to be decided. Workers' rights. The court will decide the impact of the ability of a union to represent millions of working Americans. Whatever side you're on, you may be on one side or there needs to be a decision. Otherwise, you're going to have different states with different laws, and it makes no sense. This is one nation under God. That's why we have a U.S. Senate and a U.S. House and a U.S. President and a U.S. Supreme Court, because we're one nation. And these issues have to be decided. There's one on employee discrimination. How do people get their day in court if they're being discriminated against? It doesn't matter what side you're on. The fact is, there needs to be a decision. Women's health. There's a big case on women's health as to whether or not workers can get birth control. Again, whatever side you're on, pro, con, there needs to be a decision. It's women, it's health care, it's voting rights, it's students. These cases have real consequences. So I'm going to conclude with one more chart that deals with the length of Supreme Court justices for the past 35 years. And here you see the list of the various nominees, Mr. President. Some of them made it. I think, no, not all of these made it. A couple didn't. But here's the deal with these. O'Connor waited 95 days, Rehnquist 92, Scalia 92, Bork 109, Kennedy 113, Souter 74, Thomas 110, Ginsburg 137, Breyer 114, Roberts 90, Alito 95, Sotomayor 97, Kagan 118. Under Mitch McConnell's plan, the Republican plan that they laid out, you just heard me say, if you average up all of this, you get 102 days. That's the average that it takes. Under McConnell's plan, it would take 444 days at best. That's assuming everything goes perfectly well. It could take a lot longer. And what does this mean? Anyone within the sound of my voice has heard this. Justice delayed is justice denied. That is a fact, and it is used throughout the country when we talk about the importance of making these decisions when our constituents go to jury duty. What are they told? Can you make this decision? Can you come to this decision? Because everyone deserves to have an answer. So, in conclusion, take a look at this. This is an abomination. This is the days we have seen in the last 35 years that it took to confirm. 14 of our justices were confirmed in election years since the beginning of this country, and this takes us back to the Civil War days. Imagine when we really had a country divided. And this is not what we need to do right now with all these decisions that are coming up, regardless of your stand on them. People deserve justice. And I am stunned, so I'll conclude with the do your job chart, because I got to tell you, that's what it comes down to. I urge the people of this great country to call the Republicans, every one of them, with 3 words: do your job. And if the person answering says, I don't know what you mean, say, do your job, let the process move forward on a Supreme Court justice. And if they say, well, we want an elected president, what will be told to them is, we're fortunate. We have one, elected not once but twice. More than enough time remains for him to do his job, and more than enough time remains for us to do ours. Republicans, do your job. I yield the floor.